Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. We're coming up to Valentine's Day, and I hope I can get 2 billion or so solosexuals, my best estimate for how many solosexuals there are out there, to join me on going out on a date with yourself this Valentine's Day. Go out on the best date you've ever gone. Unfortunately, I still think there's a lot to be done about accepting solosexuals for who they are. I think too many people end up in toxic relationships because of this lack of acceptance. I think we're stifling the creativity and progress for solosexuals. I often wonder if the cure for cancer, the cure for COVID-19, the discovery of element 119, or what else is there? The discovery of important AI, right, is in the minds of somebody who is solosexual, and there's societal barriers keeping them from publishing such. I really often wonder that, because think about the last big discovery that was made by somebody who was openly solosexual. I can't think of any of them. I think most, if not all, of the elements on the periodic table were discovered by somebody who was married, right? I think look at all the important characters that we've had during the pandemic, the people who discovered these breakthroughs. I think all of them were married. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of great stuff in the minds of single people, but there's societal barriers holding them back. I really do think that, by the way. I really think that. Anyway, to give you an idea why I think that, let me talk about some of the societal barriers I've been running into throughout my life. I first noticed it when I was in high school, before I even recognized I had a romance to myself. What had happened was, I was in high school, and every time there would be some kind of an event, like a prom, or even just a bunch of my friends going out, I was often excluded for not having a partner. And throughout my college years as well, people would go on double dates, multiple dates, and to be fair, a lot of times I really didn't even want a partner. I just wanted to join them. Even to this day, I very seldom get to go on a multiple date as a solosexual. A special case of that is sometimes I go out on a date with another solosexual, but of course society doesn't call it that either, right? Anyway, can you imagine, when I was working on my PhD, there were probably times when there were some ideas that I had that I just needed to run by some people, right? And I don't know if I would have come up with an important AI discovery or a cure for cancer or something. Maybe I just needed to bounce that idea off of somebody, but I never got the chance to because people didn't include me, right? That's what I mean by the concept that the discovery of something might be in the heads of somebody who is solosexual, but society is holding it back, right? I really do think that, right? The next time you're wishing that there was some kind of invention, just think about it, chew on that thought, that it might be in the heads of somebody, not necessarily somebody who is solosexual, but somebody who is not being accepted for who they are, right? It could be somebody who is neurodivergent, right? Or it could be somebody who has the wrong skin color, right? Chew on that thought the next time you wish you had something, right? So I just recently recovered from COVID-19. Unfortunately, I developed more long-term symptoms again this time around. And imagine if the relief for that, the discovery for what could relieve that was in the heads of somebody who was different in some way, that we were holding them back in some way, right? When I was working on my PhD, I got myself involved in a toxic relationship. And I know why I got involved in that toxic relationship. I didn't know that, or I didn't recognize that I could go out and do all the fun stuff without the partner, right? So, I mean, physically, I knew that the movies would play. I knew that the restaurants would welcome me going there alone. But psychologically, there was some kind of barrier, right? Which, because I was indoctrinated in the United States, right? That's why I felt that, right? But too many people, think about this. You got somebody who was destined to discover chemical 119, but they're stuck in a toxic relationship because they don't recognize that life goes on without the partner, right? Because we all think that all these great things are invented by married people, and so you got somebody who's stuck in a toxic relationship instead of breaking out of it to find chemical element 119, right? You're dealing with long COVID, and the medicine that's out there that will help you is stuck in the heads of somebody who needs to break out of that toxic relationship and develop it, right? Chew on that thought. Really chew on that thought. So I'd just broken out of the toxic relationship, and I was scared out of my mind. I was getting ready to go to a coin show in the summer of 2010. And I almost didn't go to that coin show because I didn't know I could go without the girl. I broke up with her, and I got up on the morning of the coin show, and it was a real sunny day. My car was broken down, in large part because I was involved in this toxic relationship instead of getting my car fixed. And I rode my bicycle to the coin show because it was such a sunny day, and I had the best time of my life. And it was at that moment that I discovered that, hey, you know what? I can do all this fun stuff. Unfortunately, there still wasn't a whole lot of acceptance for people who are solosexual at the time, but at least I recognized it at that point. So I was 23 years old. So between the time when I was 13 and 23, I now call it my lost decade of solosexual romance, because I didn't recognize that I had this relationship with myself, and I felt free when I went on that coin show. I just wish that I was accepted for who I was, but I found my love life at that point, and I knew I did at that point in time. Unfortunately, over the next decade after that, I encountered a lot of barriers at the beginning of my career. First, I was getting ready to graduate with my PhD, and I almost didn't want to go to the graduation ceremony. I had attended a couple of my classmates' graduations, and all of them brought partners to the graduation ceremony. I actually had one classmate who was gay, and he brought his partner there too, and so I just didn't feel like I belonged, and I almost didn't want to go to the ceremony. My parents had to drag me there. I was upset. And around that time, just before I graduated with my PhD, my grandpa passed away. We went to his funeral, and a bunch of my family went there. A bunch of them were involved in relationships. A bunch of my cousins were involved in relationships, and I almost didn't want to go. And I caused quite a disturbance at the funeral. What had happened was we had this Chinese guy who was saying these prayers in Chinese, and so my brother and I, we used to love the number 5 because my mom would come wake me up when I would ask for 5 more minutes. 5 has become quite a lucky number, and in the prayer there were a bunch of verses that had numbers in them, and every time the guy said the number 5, I would point to my brother and say, he just said 5, he just said 5. And then I started my first job, and I ran into a lot of prejudice. So a bunch of my colleagues just assumed that I had nobody to care for, and I was often working late, and there was a time when months would go by and I would hardly ever have time to cook a meal to myself. I mean, I was making good money, so I didn't care about eating out every day. To be fair, I had a good time networking with people when I was eating out, but it took an emotional beating that I didn't even have time to cook for myself. And then all my colleagues, you see, even to this day, I'm in a relatively less toxic job now, but even to this day, there's a bit of a double standard. When my colleagues go out with their spouse, they take their kids to an Eras concert, let's say, or to Disney World, it's treated like family bonding. When I go out by myself to go stargazing, or to go to an art show in another city. It's treated as indulging in a hobby, right? Or sometimes even laziness, right? It just gets treated as a double. I mean, they don't say it out loud. I wish they said it out loud, because then I could maybe educate people about this matter, but it's unspoken, right? That there's this double standard of how your free time is being colored differently. I was working at a startup company a few years ago, and again, I hardly got to go out. People just assumed that I had all this extra time. Last year, I was working at a tutoring center. We had this 1 week where there were very few appointments. I think we only had 6 hours worth of appointments, and all of my colleagues went on vacation and all that, because nobody wants to stay behind and be stuck home. You got 2 hours of work on Tuesday, 3 hours on Thursday, 1 hour on Friday, and you still have to be stuck in your hometown, right? And so you still have to commute. Now, it's fine. I was available at the time, right? The problem is that there are other things in life that I value, and so I wish it would reciprocate, right? Anyway, I was working at a different college, Washington Tech University in Seattle. They have unfortunate karma, right? They have closed because of all this prejudice. I was asked to donate some of my paid time off to a colleague. She had to take care of her sister had developed very severe COVID. Her sister had type 2 diabetes and a bunch of other risk factors, and she wanted to take care of her niece and nephew, and again, which is fine at the moment, right? Let's face it, it's summer of 2020. It's not like I'm going to be using that vacation time anytime soon, right? But there are other things in life that I value, and I wish it would reciprocate, right? So, for example, I wish I could, this April we got a solar eclipse coming up, and unfortunately, if history's any indicator, I'll be rushing around to take as few days as possible off, because my colleagues are going to make fun of me if I take more than 2 or 3 days off to do that. Meanwhile, my colleague, he's going to take his kids to go see Taylor Swift or whatever's going to be popular this year, right? Who knows, right? And it's going to be called family bonding, whereas me, when I go to see a solar eclipse, it's going to be called laziness or indulging in a hobby or something else, right? That double standard is what I want to say, right? I wish it didn't have to go that way, right? Although I should have, the next time somebody asks me to fill in, right? I gotta make sure I take the leverage when it's there, right? The next time somebody asks me to fill in because they want to take their kids to see Taylor Swift or they got family emergencies, they got a sick family member. The next time that happens, I want to be able to ask for something in return at that moment. It's kind of hard when it's a family emergency, right? You got a colleague who thinks their sister is dying. It's probably not the best time to say that, but at the same time, once it's done with, there's often a lack of appreciation, right? Her sister's doing fine these days. I think it's been 4 years, but she was doing fine the last time we spoke, right? It's easy to forget what could have been and the emotions that were charged at the moment, right? That's the tough part. All right, I invite every solosexual in my voice to please go out this Valentine's Day. Don't let this movement die. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.